Hello, and welcome to the Dissident Mama podcast. Today, my guest is Michael Lankford. Lankford is a former police detective, now school resource officer, who was fired by a North Carolina police department where he had worked for 13 years. The cause? Being accused of having membership in a Facebook group promoting the Confederacy. Gasp! What's even more ludicrous is the entity that outed Lankford for the crime of being in this super secret racist Facebook group, their words, not mine, is a Twitter account of unhinged left-wingers who themselves remain nameless. So let's find out from Lankford just what happened, how he survived the anarcho-tyranny, and where he is at today. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks for having me.
It took us a while, but third time's the charm, so I really appreciate it. I just want to start off by having you tell us what happened. I think it was June to July of 2020, exactly how you got in the crosshairs of the mobs and just what unfolded. Tell us the whole story.
Well, I was, at the time, a detective. I was working one of the latest murders we had in our town. I was the lead investigator. And during the course of the investigation, at one point, I had a little bit of downtime. So get on Facebook, just kind of browse. And looking back, hindsight 2020, I made a stupid post about, and this at the same time, a lot of people were getting doxxed, a lot of law enforcement officers, a lot of firefighters. And so I just put on there and said, look, I'm going to start me another Facebook page. I'm going to change my name. I got to protect myself. And I was posting in it was called Confederate Resistant. It was an invite only Facebook page. And I got a lot of positive on there, but then I was at work one day and I remember one of the captains came up to me and said, look, the SBI, which is the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigations, had contacted the Sanford Police Department and said that Detective Lankford's not in trouble. We're just giving them a heads up. This is officer safety. These groups, we keep an eye on them. You know, anytime there's a threat, law enforcement will let them know. No big deal. And they told me, you know, it went up the chain. I was not concerned. So I went about my investigation. Well, the next thing I know, I got my superiors, one of my majors, called me into the office. Let me know what was going on. They said, look, we're kind of concerned about this. We're going to put you on administrative duties for right now. And don't make no arrests. Don't talk to no suspects. Just talk to your victims and just go about your day. So I started doing that. Well, before that day was out, I had a meeting with our internal affairs. And they started asking questions about everything going on. And one of the things that was kind of weird that they brought up was I had posted on one of the Facebooks the Thomas DiLorenzo book, The Real Lincoln. How, you know, I had finished reading it. It opened my eyes quite a bit and basically saying how good of a book it was. Well, and that was some of the questions that they asked me I thought was kind of weird. And I asked them, I said, why are you asking me stuff like this? You know, this, I was getting kind of confused, I guess you could say. I didn't know where their investigation was headed. Well, that ended the meeting and I went about my way. And the next thing I know, I get called back into my major's office and they said, they're going to put you on administrative leave. So just do it for about a couple of weeks, let this blow over, just go home. And we're going to have your case reassigned to another investigator. And we'll go from there. So I did. I went home, told my wife. And I said, well, you know, I've been here too long. I've been in law enforcement in 19 years. I've been working there at police department for 13 years. It was my second home. And so the next thing I know, the next day, I get called from my captain and say, look, we need you to come to the station, bring your badge and your gun. Now, I've been doing this job for a long time, and I knew exactly what that meant. And I asked him then, so why are they doing this? I said, you know, I've never had any write-ups, never had any reprimands, never had any complaints. I was basically your ideal police officer. Always, you know, I didn't make no waves, did what I was told within reason. And so I told him, I said, well, you know, obviously with everything, stress was going on because of them giving me some time off. So I had a little bit of drink. So I told them, I said, well, if y'all want my badge, my gun, you're going to come pick me up. So they did. They come pick me up. And before they even said anything, I was already gathering my gear because I knew what was coming. I had already put everything in my patrol car, but I had a take-home car. And then I gave the keys to my captain. He took me to the station. They had already told all the detectives to leave the building while I was being talked to and while I was gathering my gear. So I was escorted to my desk. I cleaned up my desk. I cleaned out my locker and went and talked to my major. It was the two majors at the time, Major Patrol and the assistant chief, who was major detectives. And he basically told me, so look, I was the ideal officer, never done anything wrong. He told me, he said, if it was up to me, this would not be going on. And he flat out told me, he said, I asked him, I said, look, with no write-ups, I said, that has to count for something. Why is this happening? He said, well, you would think it would count for something. He said, but this is politics now. And he basically told me, he said, this is out of my hands. It's politics and we're letting you go. So there's no way that you can fight to keep your job. They didn't give me the option to resign, which a lot of times they do. Even when you do something major wrong, they always give you the option to resign. I was shocked that they didn't give me that option. They just flat out told me I was gone. So that being said, I got all my stuff and I went home, and the Major Patrol basically said, you have the option to write a letter to the state, give my side of the story. So as a detective, that's what I did. With the training I had with writing statements and such, through all these years, that's basically what I did. I didn't do a help me letter or doing my side of the story letter. I gave a statement, basically, a timeline of the events, a timeline of everything that happened, of everybody I talked to and what I did. And I submitted that with my paperwork that goes to the state. And then they gave me my copy of my separation letter. And then I looked on it. On the top, it's got a reason for, I guess, being fired. And the reason they gave was unbecoming conduct of an officer. And then underneath that, it had, and this was very unusual, for further information, contact Captain of Internal Affairs, and they gave their phone number. That never happened. And so I knew then that a lot of the guys at the police department, even the captain of IA, had my back in a way. They didn't want to cause waves themselves. So they were trying to help me a little bit the best way they could without putting themselves in the crosshairs. And I think it probably helped a little bit for when I found me another job. They seen that. And even when I got my new job, the people in Raleigh basically laughed about it. So how in the world can Sanford fire an ideal officer like this? And the reason that was given, they couldn't understand it. So they had to do their investigation when I got my new job. And then it's kind of funny. The chief, he told me, he said, I ain't supposed to tell you this, but he said, when I called up your former employer, he said, when I talked to Internal Affairs that does the background checks, he basically told me, he said, there was no reason for you to be separated, that this was overblown. So I knew then it was all politics. Sanford had elected, I thought, was a decent mayor, but one of the council members, me and him didn't see eye to eye. He's very liberal. And the mayor, his politics started coming out a whole lot more. And that was mainly the cause. So that's basically the rundown of everything.
And when you say they didn't let you resign, that means you didn't get any kind of pension or back pay or anything?
No, that's saved through the state.
That what?
That's saved through the state, my pension and all that stuff.
Okay.
Most of the time, and it doesn't matter what you do, for the most part. Now, you can do something very serious and they just fire you on the spot.
Okay.
Most of the time, officers will be asked, we'll give the option to resign. So you can, we're letting you go, but we'll give you the option to resign, which makes it easier when you find another job. They don't have to go through the whole investigation process.
I see.
So
Okay.
with that, it was like another knife being stabbed into me.
Okay.
And it's like and when I told them at the time, it hurt when I got fired, not because of my job performance, not because of the job I did or what I did.
Right.
You know, I expected a write up, but more of I've been there for so long. I've been around the officers. They were family to me. Even when I made detective, I told them, I said, this is my home. This is, you know, everybody worked there was my family. I felt like it. And then when they let me go that easily, that quick, it almost kind of broke your heart a little bit because you felt like your family was stabbing you in the back.
Yeah.
And that was the worst part of everything. Not the fact that I got fired, but because I was getting fired
right
at that department with my so-called family.
Right. The people you thought would have your back,
Exactly.
stabbing you in it instead. I get that. That's a huge problem these days. Tell people, where is Sanford, North Carolina?
Well, if you're familiar with North Carolina in any way, it's 40 minutes from Raleigh, from the capital. It's almost in the dead center of the state. It's in Lee County, which ironically named after General Lee. You go to our courthouse. There's a big portrait of General Lee in the courthouse. Before you get to the courthouse, there's a monument that was erected by the SCV of General Lee. So our county was, land was given by Harnett County and Moore County to form Lee County as a permanent monument for General Lee. So when they turn down these monuments and everything, I always laugh. I said, our whole county is built as a monument. So what are you going to do? Get rid of the whole county?
Right.
But yeah, that's basically where I'm at. I was born and raised here. Everything I've got is here, but especially with this new mayor, they're turning the county, which was red, there's more and more people from Chapel Hill and Raleigh coming in, and you can see the whole demographics are changing. So,
is your mayor from there and a scallywag, or is he an outsider?
As far as I know, he's from here. Real estate company, which I don't want to go in that big rabbit hole, but there's a lot of ethics things that I see that he's done. Just one example is he used money to build this big factory, hoping to rent it out. And guess who was the company that was renting everything out? So, but yeah.
So let's see. Let's talk about why you think this happened in particular. Okay. We know times are crazy, but was it because it was 2020, June, July, coming at the tail end of the crazy riots that went on forever, that normal people could see were insane and other people thought were, like some kind of righteous cause? Is it because of that? Or is this just kind of the tide of the way it's going in law enforcement these days?
Well, no, I think it's because with everything going on with the monuments, with everything going on with the flag, with our heritage, not long before my termination, one of the city workers that works at Public Works staged some big BLM march. And during his time while on duty, while working, he staged his march. They marched down 3rd Street, marched to the police department, went to the front of the police department. Everybody was hand raised, fist raised, doing their chants. They won't get any action or the attention that they wanted. So they went around to the back of the building, which is where our detective division is at. Did the same thing, still didn't get the attention, and then they all dispersed. Well, due to him doing that on his time, taking away city pay and stuff like that, they let him go. And I guess they saying when that group really blasted my name out there with a picture of a Confederate flag, I guess there was their determination, like, well, we let the BLM guy go, we got to let the Confederate go.
Oh, I see.
I think that probably played a role in it, but like I said, all politics.
Right. Okay, so I've never shared a screen before. So, well, I've done it not in a live recording or whatever. So I'm going to give that a whirl. We're going to look at the article that, showed what a bad guy you were. So let me see if I can figure this out. All right, here we go. So can you see my screen?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
All right, so this is the article that I found. I don't know if there were other ones, and I looked high and low, so let me know if I'm missing one, but they're called The Rant, news out of Sanford, North Carolina. Who even knew there was such a thing? I mean, come on, this is insanity. But anyway, officer accused of membership in Confederate Resistance Facebook group, no longer with SPD. So it gives, of course, a left-wing take on the story, just, saying who you are. And then it says you were exposed on July 11th by a Twitter account right here, saying here called We Will Be Ruthless. Okay, so they're the one that I referenced in the intro. They have, I don't know, not even 2,000 followers. They really just retweet a bunch of stuff that other left-wingers put out. I poked around on there a while. It didn't seem like something super high IQ or anything. Just, basic left-wing talking points and a lot of retweets. But it says you were a member of a private Facebook group called Confederate Resistance. Now, I actually tried to join them because I was going to poke around in there and see what they had, and when you try to sign up, we don't believe in bigotry. We love everybody. Yeah. They made it very clear. We're just about loving our ancestors, whatever. I'm assuming that it's still an existent Facebook group. They're not in there calling for, assassinations or anything. So I'm in quite a few Confederate groups myself, and nobody's, unhinged violent in them. So, right. So anyway, let's see what else. So here is your picture right here. That's and right. Then this is, let's see here. Let's go back. So that's just the original tweet from We Will Be Ruthless. Okay, we'll go back to that in a sec. And then down here, they link to this, well, I was about to call her a lady. She is no lady, a woman named Megan Squire. She teaches at Elon, which is how far from Sanford is that? That's pretty close, huh?
Yeah, you're looking, the way Sanford is, it's almost everything's about 40 to 50 minutes away.
Okay, so Elon University is in Graham, I guess, and that's where this chick Megan Squire teaches. We'll get into her in a second, but being that We Will Be Ruthless is linking up to Megan Squire, she's very influential and highly powerful. They're not. So see, they're already connecting the dots, and she's retweeting things. So this is, let's see. This is the thing that got you kicked out here. Yeah. I read this. People who are watching the video can read it, but you're just saying things are crazy. I'm going to get out of this group because I'm in law enforcement, and you can get fired for being in groups like this. I mean, I just see this as common sense. You had called it stupid, but maybe you're saying it was stupid because you made an announcement, hey, I'm getting out. But it seems like you were just trying to be mannerly and say, hey, I'm hitting the road because times are crazy. That's kind of how I read that. So can y'all hear my dog? She's so loud. Sorry. So anyway, and then they have this hooked up here, somebody else's tweet. I don't know if you put that in the group or whatever. So they have this link to you, kind of guilt by association. Hey, don't apologize for being white. I don't even know if you had anything to do with that. I have no problem with saying it's not bad being white.
That was one of the things that my IA guy brought up. And okay. So look, I ain't never seen that. I'm not sure what they're getting hung up on. They said I didn't tweet it. Never, as far as I didn't retweet it or repost it on Facebook.
Yeah. So they could have put a picture here of, whatever, somebody being lynched, and because they put it right beside your thing, it makes it seem like you've done it. I mean, just horribly unethical, but you don't have to comment on this, but I'm not going to apologize for being white because I like it and I like my husband and children. So that's not a big deal to me. And then it goes down here. It's just some more rant, the rant NC people are going off. Okay. So, do you know if Megan Squire, the woman who teaches at Elon, do you know if she had anything to do with Rant NC being given the information? Because that's kind of her MO. She's deemed as kind of this, online hate expert, and she's given all these awards. Or was there a spy in that group? Do you know how
Now
you were outed?
Now that I have no doubt.
Okay.
With the Confederate Resistance Group, I almost know for a fact that these people had infiltrated that group, lied about who they were, and got in there and watched. And that opened my eyes to quite a few things
Mm-hmm.
when in regards to magazines and such, other podcasts, other videos, that I know that these groups intentionally go in there and listen to the podcast, watch the videos just to see who they can dox, who they can out.
Right.
So I have no doubt there were some people in there that watched the group and watched the post. Some of them were being harassed, some of the other people in there, and they were getting rid of people left and right that they found out that were not pro-Confederate. And I guess some of them just slipped through the cracks, and they've seen my post, and because like you said, it was a private group, and they seen an easy target, I guess, and went after me. And what they did, they hashtag or tagged the mayor, one of the city council members, WRAL, which is a local news station, the Sanford Herald, which is our local paper, and the Rant, I believe the Rant, and even the Lee County people I don't actually work for, they were being harassed for it too, and they have no connection with me. WRAL never did anything with it that I know of. Sanford Herald, they did 2 articles. They did the initial article.
Okay.
And it was kind of funny and bad timing, because right after this happened, I was getting ready to get hired at another place, and I'm not sure if they found out about it or what, but they reposted an article with a small sentence saying it was an update. And the place I was getting ready to get hired, I guess it spooked them and they changed their mind. So
Interesting.
But yeah, I say, I'm talking about the city council member. I know this for a fact because when everything was going on, this was before I knew how serious it was. We were in the middle of a meeting. It was me and some of the other detectives. We were talking about the case. And I happened to look down I was standing up, one of my guys were sitting beside him, and his phone lights up. I don't want to be nosy, but you see something light up, and especially in a darker room, you look down. Well, when I did, it was the council member, Chaz Post, and he had he instant message or texted my other detective, and within the screenshot of the tweet from this group, "We will be ruthless," with just the caption, "Wow." So I knew then, the way he was and the way we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things, that he was the main ringleader with everything that happened. I have no doubt. In fact, a good friend of ours, talked to him about it one time, and he denied everything. And she basically looked at him in his face and told him he was a bull-faced liar. So a lot of people knew. A lot of people knew what the truth was.
So it's interesting, you have the left-wing cabal, right? So it includes everything, government, media, Hollywood, whatever, the church, unfortunately, and then police, and if one piece of that puzzle or that cabal, that the Leviathan that makes this left-wing narrative go forward, if one piece of it just maybe started to wake up or dissent or not play along, it could put a chink in the armor. So I want to talk a little bit about the whole, Megan Squire and that whole ilk of person, that whole ilk of people fighting the righteous cause. And then I want to ask you a little bit about your take on the police. So, so Megan Squire, again, she teaches at Elon. Here she is here. There've been some good articles written on her. This is just a blog by a person named Lady Liberty, but it's got some good stuff. They have Far Left Watch, they're quoting them, and like, here's a picture of her with these radical, crazy Raleigh Durham IWW, here she is right here with her little fist, doing her, commie thing. I used to follow her on Twitter, but I blocked her now because I don't like her. But anyway, she had a picture of like herself in Russia in front of Lenin. Now, I've been to Russia and went to Red Square, so that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but I'm not standing in pictures doing little fists. So she is pretty much not a nice person. And but then you look at, her, she's lauded by people, the ADL has made her a Belfer fellow. So not only is that reputable, but she's getting the big bucks, right? I mean, so she's institutionally powerful, and now she's getting the money. She's kind of the SPLC go-to gal, one of them, for far-right extremism. She recently did this thing with another chick named Hannah Gase, where, all these people have talked to each other, and they made this big blob of how, here's this person talking to this other person, and it's all this huge network of evil people, and they're so powerful, when really it's just people talking to each other. So Michael Lankford talks to Dissident Mama, a year ago, I talked to Joe Schmo talked to whatever, so they piece together this whole thing, like we're the powerful ones and running the show. And it would be really funny if it wasn't so nefarious. So anyway, her thing is for, deplatforming. It says this here, she's for deplatforming far-right extremists. That could be anyone. That could be getting fired, a guy who reads a Thomas DiLorenzo book. So, I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is because I want normal people to understand there's no hiding from this, and no amount of virtue signaling is going to keep you safe. So she also has this thing called whack-a-mole, and I'll just read it straight from the, Daily Wire article from 2018. It's centralizing the gathered information on alleged far-right extremists and filtering it to the highly biased left-wing group, Southern Poverty Law Center, in hopes of getting such individuals monitored or fired from their jobs. I mean, they're literally saying, if you dissent at all to the left-wing orthodoxy, they want to get you fired from your job. And of course, not just fired, but making you unhireable. And then down here at the bottom of this quote here too, they don't mind releasing addresses and stuff too. So she not only gives information to people like Rant NC to infiltrate a group to get you fired, but she gives information to all sorts of bad guys to come and throw a brick through your window and do whatever else anarcho tyrants do, which we know is horrible, violent stuff. So it's this is bad stuff, and it's big money. And how did you come out on top of that? That there is this cabal, it's well funded, it's well protected, but yet you have come out on the other side and you're doing pretty good. I know a couple other people who are like that too. Is it just your faith in Christ? Is it that you have good family? How did you survive all this?
Well, I would say the main part is the family, because they don't let you give up. Because if you give up, who's going to feed them? My kids more than anything. So it's more of, if that was the end of my career and I have to go to dig ditches for the rest of my life, then so be it. And that's basically what I did. After I got out, I was putting in applications everywhere, and I was getting interviews everywhere. Every time I put in an application, I was getting interviews. They liked me and everything. But I was never getting the callbacks. I was always getting the letters.
Now, can I ask you a question? Is that because you weren't allowed to resign that red flag? And then people would say, why does he have this red flag? I mean, Were they allowed to say, oh, we thought he was a horrible neo-Confederate, or what?
Right. No, on the application, it's got a spot on there saying, have you ever been terminated from a law enforcement?
Just that. Okay.
And because of that, I had to put yes. If I was able to resign, I could have put no, and that would have been the end of it. Now, being that I was terminated and I didn't go from one job directly to the next, there would have been a small investigation on it because I was not, when I was looking for another job, I was no longer a sworn officer. But like I said, you wouldn't have had to check that block and it would have been a little bit easier. But like, again, I was putting in applications, time was going by, the money because that Sanford had to pay me out several $1,000s just because of everything I had saved up. So I was living off of that for at least a month. And then it quickly came to the fact that I told my wife, I said, I got to find something. Well, I don't care what it is, I got to find it. So I called one of the guys that I used to work with at the police department. And I went to work for him in his plumbing company. And I did that, and I had seriously thought about doing a career change. So I'm done with law enforcement. It's getting too political. I can't be myself. And, I'll go work in plumbing, go get my license. But it became apparent that I won't be able to make the money that I needed to. I didn't have the benefits. So I started thinking about where else can I apply. And then by that time, I got a phone call from an old friend of mine, her husband. She told me to call her husband. Well, I told her, I said, I don't know your husband, but she convinced me to talk to him, and I did. And he basically told me, said, go to this department, put in for it, I'll get you hired. So I did. And looking back, that's the best decision I ever made. It's a small town. It was never on the radar for me to put in until he said so. And I remember the day I dropped off the application, they were shocked that they were getting somebody with the experience like I got. And it took a while because of the investigation with the state to get my certification reactivated. But it did, and I got sworn in, and I'm making a little bit less money, but I don't have the stress that I do now. I'm loving my job again. I'm not getting called out all the time like I was as a detective, and I'm working with the best people. Looking back, if nothing ever happened, I would have been a detective for the rest of my career. Mm-hmm. But now that I'm here, I ain't going nowhere.
Did you just go in, put your cards on the table, tell them everything? And
oh yeah,
yeah,
I told them flat out. Yeah, when I turned in the application, and I'm not sure if he'd already talked to the other guy or not, my friend's husband, and gave him a rundown. But I let him know everything. So this is what it is. And when I told him the reason why I got fired was the Confederate flag and some of my Confederate views and the way of politics, he flat out, my chief looked at me and said, we don't care about that around here. So, which would that was a breath of fresh air. Yeah. When I heard that, and I didn't have to worry about nothing. And like I said, the state took a while, but it did. And now I'm in this position, and it's been the most rewarding position I've ever had.
Oh, that's really awesome. Yeah. And I think, truth in advertising, kind of put it all out there. And, it may take a while to get in a groove and find people that have your back, but then you're not looking over your shoulder thinking, when's the next docs or whatever. Yeah. We are who we are, unapologetically. And I think that was the exact right tack. But it's interesting too, because, I don't live that far from you. I live in the North Carolina area that's not too far from your neck of the woods. And, I've grown up in the Southeast my whole life, have been living in North Carolina since 2000. And I'm not saying this because of my white privilege. The South is just the best place for everybody. And it's so interesting when I was following one of I think it was the Rant North Carolina Twitter feeds. We don't have to go back to it, but Megan Squire, again, she comes in and she puts in the big guns. And this is what she says about Graham, North Carolina, because and it's just, she's painting the entire South like this. She's painting all of North Carolina. Somebody was saying, oh, where did all this stuff happen? It's in Graham, North Carolina, which is in Alamance County, geographic center of the state, politically red, perpetually racist. Our sheriff has a long history, as do our clan roots, and ugh, it's just too much to go into. Sordid, awful. Today we took another solid step towards a fix. And I just find that so dystopian, so hubristic. So, I mean, I don't know where she's from. I've poked around on her a little bit, but I'm not sure if she's a native or what, but just thinking that we need to be fixed. They need to swoop in and save us because, there's lynchings happening all the place. And we're just so mean when really we were doing pretty good until, the Yankees started their reconstructing. So,
Yeah.
so, do you see this as our current state as just like perpetual reconstruction, where we had kind of this honeymoon period in the 20th century, but now they've just upped it a bit because they are the cabal now, because they have the power? Or is this like, the newfangled Civil War? It's not quite as violent, but it's more like psychologically torturous. How do you see it?
I look back and I look at the news and I watch, and I'm not as much read as some people, but I do read, quite a bit about history, and I see it repeating itself. And right now they're talking about how everything's racist, Confederate statues are racist, and they need to come down. And I'm sure you've probably heard it, and everybody else has probably heard it about saying that's low hanging fruit. This is where they start. I don't think it's just the South. I don't think it's just Confederate values. I think it's just American values as a whole. I think these people, they don't like the freedom that we have. They don't like capitalism at all. And I'm not saying the capitalism we got is the best version in the world, but but I think like it's an attack on everything, and this is just a part of it. And once they get done with this part, they're going to move on like they tore down the statue in New York of Jefferson. It's the whole founding. It's the 1619 project. Right. That's where everything's coming from.
Right. Verifiably false. Even left-wingers say was completely fabricated. Well, not completely, but many parts of it were. So take this one tiny bit of truth and just, historical fiction, and they still don't care, Yeah,
anything that has to do with our founding, it has to, the Pilgrims, anything that has to do with what they're calling the white culture or whatever, they're wanting to get rid of, they're wanting to destroy. And make no mistake about it, that just from what I'm seeing, that's their main target, is to get basically white genocide.
And I love that you use that word, because some kind of the Matt Walshes of the world, some other people like him weren't using that term. They would not say the word white.
We can't
but they are now.
Yeah,
it's undeniable.
It's years back they would not call something, or they won't say stuff out loud. Now they're screaming it from the rooftop, saying this is what we want to do. This, and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. I mean, everything from the vax mandates to creating, what was it, the prime minister in New Zealand or Australia talking about creating a second class two-tier system, and she was asked a question about it, and she laughs about it. That stuff 10 years ago at least, that would never been an issue, and they wouldn't they would have never admitted to it. So I'm not blind to some of the stuff that's going on, and the only thing that I can say to people is raise your kids and your family right, and let them, as the generations go, let the other side not get a foothold. Don't brainwash your kids, and just keep on going. That's what I do with mine.
It's funny, the commies talk about the haves and the have-nots, and they certainly believe in that system. It's just they want to be the haves and they want us to be the have-nots, when a middle class is a good thing, and that's what they want to get rid of. And it's like that's what helps most people, of every creed and every color.
My idea, if that's the system they want, let them have it. They can go out west. There's a whole West Coast there. I'm sure they'll fit right in. My only thing is stay away from the South and Mason-Dixon.
I know, and that's the crazy part. So the whole rest of the country supposedly hates the hayseeds and the backwoods, Cousin Mary and Southerners, but they're all flooding here. And a lot of, like my libertarian friends are like, that's so great. And I'm like, please stay where you're at. We full right here.
Oh,
we got enough problems already.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny, like I said, I dabble in history. I'm talking about when the first talk of secession first happened back in the early 1800s. And it's kind of funny. I told my mother a long time ago, because she was talking about it. I said, well, it's just a fringe thing now. And don't worry about it because you're hearing it on all these fringe groups. Mm-hmm. Now, when you start hearing the word secession on mainstream media and stuff like that, so then you better start paying attention. And what's happening? It's now been the talk. Heck, I heard Glenn Beck talk about it last week. And I think two of his shows, he was talking about secession. Yeah. And I like, a lot of people don't like Glenn. I like Glenn. Now, we don't agree with everything. I think he said something the other day. He was talking about how bad everything was getting and how we need to fight. And then he stopped by saying, I don't mean to talk about guns and we can go out there and fight. We just need to keep on going with elections. A lot of people are not trusting the elections now.
Yeah.
And as soon as he said that, I'm like, well, it's the time, Glenn, because it's getting pretty bad.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not a military guy. I was never in war, but I'm not dumb. I know, I'm a Civil War reenactor. So, and I've read up on how
awesome.
And I know if that was to happen, it ain't going to be pretty.
Right.
It's going to be we're going to be a whole lot worse off than what we are.
Yeah.
But we can only go this path where we're going for so long. I mean, right now we're actually, I don't like using the term Civil War, but it could be close to that. I mean, we're in that cold area.
Yeah.
We're being divided. And my thing is, if you want it peaceful, just go ahead and separate the country. Yep. Let your political views go one way. Pick the place you want to go. And it's going to be tough at first because you're going to have to get up and move and find a new property. But I think in the long run, it'll be a lot better. Yeah. And if you do that correctly, you will not have you won't have this big war or bloodshed like everybody's fearing. Just bite the bullet, go where you think your views and morals match, and let's live our lives.
Right.
So,
secession doesn't have to be violent. The only reason it was not peaceful in 1861 is because a federal entity said, well, we're going to invade you and force you back in at the point of a bayonet. So that's not secession's fault. That's the other side saying, we don't want you to leave because we want to dominate you and take your stuff.
I love the quote from Davis: is all we want is to be left alone.
Yeah, let us alone.
Yeah, I say that all the time.
Well, it's interesting. This is just a tiny little segue. You had brought up Glenn Beck, and he's interesting. Back in my neocon days, I remember he was doing this thing where he was talking about taking pitchforks and torches. I mean, this was like a long time ago to DC, and he would do a show with like a pitchfork behind him. I thought that was pretty funny. But he's interesting because sometimes I think it's conservatives or Republicans that are the biggest obstacle to any type of consolidation on the right or non-left wingers, right? Okay, we don't agree on these 100 things, but we know we hate cultural Marxism and we hate censorship, whatever. We just want to be left alone. And he really does not like the South. And I find that sad. He blames it for all the ills, but I'm like, I don't understand how you can still see, it's almost like he's playing into the narrative. And I don't know, I don't want to bash him because you like him, but I'm like, how can he not, he's a smart guy. How can he not see that if there had just been peaceful secession, that the scapegoat of the South and the angry cracker and all that kind of stuff, it only perpetuates the dumb narrative. So,
I think a lot of that spews from the public school
bad history
of the reason of the war. Yeah. Everybody, nobody wants to believe or wants to say that slavery was a good institution and everything. Even your diehard Confederates out here still today is going to say that was one of the biggest mistakes. But I think that drives a lot of people that would probably be friendly to the South. They get hung up on that.
Right.
And they don't research it any further, or they think that the other research is false.
Right.
And you got to go back further than 1860 to see the South.
Yeah.
What it was.
And I try to turn the tables on people like that. I say, well, if you don't believe in slavery, why do you want my 8 children to be enslaved? Because that's what we're talking about now. So I'm like, if you don't want to go back and learn your history, let's talk about modern day enslavement. Oh, and I said the word enslavement. Okay, so I'm doing it all PC. I didn't mean to do that. Whoops. Anyway, whatever. I've read so much left-winger stuff, and sometimes their stupid language rubs off on me. Okay, so let's start wrapping it up. The Charlottesville trial is going on now. Sines v. Kessler. NPR is saying it's hate on trial. My friend Ann Wilson Smith just wrote Charlottesville Untold. Even for people who thought they knew a lot about Charlottesville, this book, she really does a great job of explaining the legalities and all the civil stuff behind the scenes, and how, as VDare said today, if anybody should be on trial, it's not Jason Kessler, it's Terry McAuliffe. So, I'm kind of, I'm on that team for sure. But the point of me bringing this up is there would have been no January 6th, the violent insurrection and the treasonous people putting their feet on Nancy Pelosi's desk. That narrative that is abundantly false would not have gotten legs if it hadn't been for Charlottesville. Okay, I won't go into all the details. Most people know it, but there would have been no successful Charlottesville beating the horrible, deadly white supremacists, and then the wonderful BLM Antifa righteous warriors, marching through the streets when there was a state of emergency, taking over the streets. There would have not been that narrative made. White dudes who like Confederacy bad, BLM Antifa, whatever, sinless truth warriors. Police made that happen in part. They weren't the whole thing, but they were part of that cabal. As a former detective, why is this happening? Is it just because people are scared to lose their jobs? Is it just fear in general? I don't get that. I'm not like a super thin blue line person. Cops are always right, but I'm also like, they are supposed to protect our rights. What's going on here?
Yeah. Gosh, there's a lot to it. Well, one, I always view when you first get in law enforcement, obviously you're a rookie, and when you get to that position, you're basically the yes man. Whatever your superiors tell you, whatever your training officer tells you, you tell them what to do. Now, I'm not sure what kind of officers they had on that day. I'm sure a lot of them were probably rookies. So they're looking at everything. They're not really using their own perspective. They're not using their own critiques to come to their own conclusion of what's going on. They're looking to their superiors. What do I do? And if superior says, go over there and block that, or go over there and arrest him, no questions asked, that's what he's going to do.
Or do nothing.
Or do nothing. Yeah. If they just said, you don't get involved, you stay right here. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to stay right there. Right. Now, then you got your senior guys, which I say is 7 years and up. To me, you're still a rookie if you until you hit your 7-year mark. Mm-hmm. And some of them are looking at there you got their eyebrows raised, and they're looking at what's going on, saying, hey, this ain't right. And I'm sure some of them were probably on the phone, talking to the commanders, talking to the captain, saying, look, we need to do this. We need to do this. And they're probably getting told, no, stand down. We ain't got orders from the mayor or from the chief. They're going to do anything yet. And I'm sure, now I wasn't there, there was probably a handful, I'm just talking, I'm speculating on what I would do if I was in that situation. That there was probably a handful that did get involved in there and tried to help the few people that they had, but it's not enough unless everybody gets involved. And then you're going to have your senior guys that they may or may not agree with it. They may say, no, this ain't right, but I'm not getting involved in it because if I get fired, my retirement's gone. Right. Or I've got 5 more years left. I'm not going to jeopardize my full retirement for these people out here on the street. Let them have at it, And I'm sure some of them probably thought that, and they didn't get involved. But I'm sure and some of them that did that probably was thinking, well, I hope this side beats the mess out of each other, and maybe they'll stop.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't get in their mindset. But I do know, like when I got fired, the first thing that was going through my head was my retirement.
Yeah.
You know, you work that because that's all you know. I've been doing this for 20 years and I can help plumbing, I can help with electrician, but you're not going to get paid that much, nowhere near what you're getting paid as a law enforcement officer.
Yeah.
Especially a seasoned law enforcement officer. So your options, because what I know is law enforcement. What I know is how to go and make an arrest. How do I go and facilitate and talk to people that's in the middle of a domestic? Those are not knowledge you can take to a trade skill.
Yeah.
Those are not knowledge that you can take to go work in a factory or something like that. You know, you're basically starting from the bottom up.
Right.
So I'm 45 now. So if something made like what happened last year was to happen, I can't get back in law enforcement. I'm basically starting from the bottom up like an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
And I can't raise a wife and 2 kids
Right.
on the salary of an 18-year-old.
Middle-aged white guy seeks work, you know, not the greatest
Yeah.
card to have these days.
So I think a lot of that went through their mind. And the politics today, they're just going to let you go in a heartbeat, you know, if you do that. So, so I'm sure a lot of that crossed their mind. Well, now you got Virginia, and you got a big city in Virginia. There's probably some cops, and I've talked to some even in Sanford that are liberal too, and they're probably no, I'm going to let Antifa do this because I see that he's got a weapon, so I'm not going to say nothing until he bashes this right ringer in the head. You know, then maybe I'll do something, maybe not. You know, maybe I'll turn my head.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's some of them out there.
Yeah.
So cops are just regular people, just like everybody else. And I mean, when I worked for Sanford, there was another guy. He got terminated also that had similar views. I mean, there were some laws, and there's some laws today that I will not enforce.
Right.
Because I think they infringe on individual liberty.
Yeah.
Like tags laws and stuff. You know, you got to expire a tag. Well, your car is good, but there's now a law against it because the state hadn't got their tax money.
Right.
Well, I was one of the officers one time said, I'm not the tax collector.
Right.
I'm not writing tickets. I'll enforce laws that endanger somebody's health or endanger somebody's property when it comes to the state passing a law because they ain't got no money.
Right.
Or they want somebody's money. That's not me.
Right.
Yeah.
It's almost like Schadenfreude, you know, well, it is Schadenfreude, you know, this kind of masochistic, you know, sadistic thing that we're all out here and, you know, we're supposed to be law abiding and following these rules and wearing our masks but it's lawlessness too. So on one hand, I wish cops would just say, y'all have at it, do with it, get out in the streets, you know, and then at that point I'd be like, okay, we understand there are 2 sides, pick a side, you know, that's one of the things that I think makes this like more psychologically torturous than even the actual war of Northern aggression is you knew what the sides were, you knew what the deal was, and it was a clear delineation. And now everything's so confusing. I mean, it is, it's bizarre because, you know, if you do defend yourself and you happen to not be, you know, chosen whoever minority, you get in trouble. So yeah, it's a mess, but, you know, I'm glad you gave me your take on it. And we know it's just speculation and you weren't there, but, you know, I have a family member who's a police officer and I ask him these types of questions all the time. So I like to know, I mean, y'all are people and they're dangling that carrot and I get it. Okay, 2 more questions and then we got to go because I know you got to go. Tell me just briefly about your Confederate ancestry.
Oh, I've got 4 people, I think, that fought in the War of Northern Aggression. One of them, sad to say, was a Yankee, but he was distant. James R. Burr. I think he fought for the Company K of the Mounted Tennessee Infantry. Because on that side of the family, they were all from the mountains of North Carolina, Tennessee.
Yeah.
Then on my Confederate side, which were all Georgians, I've got 2 brothers, a James Lankford, which ironically is the name of my dad, and I want to say I can't remember his first name now. But anyway, two brothers enlisted on the same day, and Abraham Langford, and Abraham Langford's son, Sylvester Lankford. So I've got three Langfords that all mustered in Georgia all on the same day. So you got father, son, and uncle or brother,
Wow.
I was kind of proud on that when I started looking, I started researching, and when I joined the SCV, they turned me on to some other ones, and, to James Lankford, and I was like, I'm pretty proud of this,
Yeah.
And I had a grandmother that was Sylvester's wife. She was captured by Sherman in Georgia and sent to Ohio and forced to work in the Yankee factories. Luckily, after the war, most of my ancestors lived through the war, and Sylvester was able to reconnect with his wife, and they had another one of my descendants back in, I think it was right after the war. So, yeah, I've got a deep, doing my ancestry, my Langford side was stopped. I couldn't go no further than Abraham. But my mother's side, I was able to go back all the way to England. My family's been here since the Revolutionary War, all the way up to today, obviously. So, yeah, I'm pretty proud of it. Especially when I seen that. I'm glad I've only got one Yankee that was.
Yeah.
Most of them were good Southern people. So.
Yeah, and I heard somebody describe once, why do Southerners still care so much about the war? And it's like, because it's all in the family. It's very personal.
I mean, they talking about Reconstruction ended so many years ago, and I'm like, no, you're still seeing it today.
Right.
Today.
It looks a little different, but it's all the same thing. Step back and see the big picture.
Yeah, I read accounts of Reconstruction, what Sherman did way back when, and I'm like, as barbaric as the Yankees were during Reconstruction, or even Sherman marching up, I said, how can anyone not, proud of Confederation, and how can anyone not hate the Yankees or this government that we live in now because of what they did back then?
You need to tell Glenn Beck that. Send him a nice email on my behalf.
I've really been pondering it, let me tell you.
Yeah, and then you've got the big wigs like at Prager, Victor Davis Hanson. I mean, he does his own thing that said, oh, Reconstruction, it needed to be worse. And it's still, I mean, I could go, that's a whole nother ball of wax. But those are the people that are the conservatives. Those are supposed to be our allies.
They asked me proof. I said, how can you prove Reconstruction happened today? And I was like, look at what happened in my career.
Right.
I mean, that's part of it.
Yeah, you're Exhibit A.
Yeah.
All right, last question. You once told me in an email that, quote, it's odd to think that even growing up, your ancestors were steering you in a particular direction or belief. Can you explain what that means?
Well, say for instance, when I was young, didn't know any better. I was going with the public education. I was 10 years old. You see a Civil War show, they always portray the Confederates as bad guys. So I pulled for the Yankees. I was always pro Yankee. And then you start reading and you start learning the truth. And then especially if you're from the South, you're like, oh crap, this is my family. We felt this. This happened to us. This is real. This ain't no TV show. And I talked to my grandmother, and she was raised by the Yankee. And you said his name to her right in front of her face, and she would get mad, spit on the ground, tell you to get out. She couldn't stand the guy. And she knew him when she was 3 years old, and he helped raise her. And I see people out there and how they view certain things, and whether it be public education, indoctrination, or they were able to break free from it. I like to think that, like in my case, that my grandfathers, Abraham and Sylvester, that they were looking down on me and steering me in some way, I would hope, to learn the truth. And they say, science says that the last article I read was somehow memories are passed on through your DNA. Mm-hmm. Whether that's true or not, who knows? But I like to think that if it is true, that they're steering me, and they were writing the course. They see me steering, going in a different direction, and they writing it. And I had the biggest compliment, and you probably know Kevin Stone. He's been in the news a lot lately too. I was talking to him one day, and and it was just something off the wall. And he introduced me to somebody, and he said, "This is Mr. Lankford. He's another fellow Confederate, not another fellow SCV member, not a fellow officer or anything like that. It was a fellow Confederate." And that's the biggest compliment I have ever been given. And a lot of people, some people, they don't understand. If you're not from the South, if you don't ancestors, or you don't hold the values that the Confederates had, you probably won't never understand it. But when he said that, I still take that today. So one of the biggest compliments I've ever had. They were strong men.
Yeah, and that's a great way, just a modern tack to, neo-Confederate. And people are always trying to push that label away. Go, yeah, I'm not a neo-Confederate. I'm a Confederate.
Exactly.
Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Yep.
Well, I just thank you for sharing the story, and thank God you have a great family. You have a strong faith in Christ, and you have a great new job with people who have your back. And maybe you can just mention Tom DiLorenzo books to those students who are milling around the hallways. Whoops! Just tell them how that is.
Yep.
Buy them in bulk and give them out as Christmas presents.
I wish. I'm trying to. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to yours a lot. And I listen to some of the other ones, and they have all these people that are well read, and I'm trying to catch up. And especially with history books, I've got one I'm reading now by Samuel Court Ash, an old. I'm not sure if you know it. I was actually in the Wilmington battleship, and I got this.
Okay.
You
have it there?
Yeah.
Hold it up.
View of invasion of the Southern states. So I don't know if you can see.
Nice. Yeah, I've heard of the author before. I'm not familiar with that exact.
Yeah, supposedly he was a captain in the Confederate Army, and he ended up being a North Carolina legislator. Huh. Then he ended up being a historian. So a lot of people, when I've read the reviews on Amazon and stuff like that, they were bashing him, obviously.
That's when you know it's a good book.
Exactly. I can't remember. I'm not sure. This is from the Confederate Reprint Company. So I'm not sure if I ordered this online or what, but I did get one on the battleship. I'm not sure if it was that one or not, but that's my view now. I've been trying to get history books, and as soon as I get time, I start pouring over them.
Yeah.
I have learned nobody can learn everything that happened in the time period, especially what led up to it. There's volumes, there's nuances that happen. And I was talking to one of the ladies here not long ago. She was talking about the cause of the war. And I said, well, you have to go back to, and I think I did some quick research right on time. You have to go back to when South Carolina were first talking to the government back in the 1830s. So then you will learn the cause of the war. And everybody I talk to, when I start talking to them, it's like they find something out that they've never been told before.
Yeah.
They've always been told that the war was about slavery, the war was about this. And, the mistreatment of people. I said, yeah, a little. I said, but you got to look at the whole picture.
Right.
Look at the tariffs. Look at the taxes. Look at what how the stock is being treated.
Yeah.
Money. Everything's rooted in money.
Yeah. So. And it's funny too, they think of, the South, they were traitors because they wanted to leave this glorious thing called America. And, I've learned that Northerners were the first to talk about secession, and then not 1970s, 1790s. I mean, there wasn't this beautiful utopian thing called America, and everybody was getting along. It was very different, and I find that fascinating. History is just amazing, and it's a deep well.
And a lot of people that fight against that narrative, to me, it seems like they don't want to know the truth.
Right?
They've been slavery, and you can't tell them nothing else. You tell them, hey, succession, we joined the union voluntarily.
Right.
Voluntarily, we can leave.
Right.
They don't want to hear that. They say, find it in the Constitution where it says you can do that.
Right.
Find it in the Constitution where it says that we can't.
Right. Exactly. And who would want to perpetuate this thing where nobody's getting along, and it's 4 time zones and, 340 million people and never growing, and we're a blob that has territories. And I'm like, That's
What was that? I
like
read
an
somewhere.
empire.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere where it said that was never the intention of our founders to
Yeah.
be so big.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've become this American empire. We do the Pledge of Allegiance here, and obviously I stand up because I don't want to be that guy. You know, the kids, I have to set an example on that, but I don't say it. It's not my heart. Yeah. I learned that a long time ago. How can you pledge allegiance to a country that goes around everywhere, especially fighting for freedom?
Right.
When our own freedom, our own government is at stake. So, yeah. No, that flag is not flying at my house.
That's right. I wrote an essay on that a long time ago, how, I'm mannerly and I stand, so I don't freak people out, but then they usually notice, hey, your hand's not on your heart. You're not saying the words. And then you start a conversation with them. I'm not a barbarian. I do, I don't want to be like that person sitting down with like a power fist or whatever. I just, whatever, but it starts conversations. And then when you tell them, hey, it was written by the social gospel weirdo, it's very interesting. But you're right. And the last thing I'll say, does this drive you crazy? You're driving around North Carolina and you drive past a house and you're like, oh, I see a battle flag. Like my kids, they always like spot the battle flag. And then we're like, oh, it's flying right beside a US flag. I'm like, how could you square those two things? That is so odd.
Yeah, I see it around town here on a couple houses, and I just shake my head and say, you don't realize what you're doing, what that means.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think it just comes from ignorance. They've put a name on a confederacy, and a lot of people don't know no different.
Yeah.
And until they start reading, they start doing their own research and break the shackles of the government, public education, they're never going to know any better. But luckily, there's people that like us that spread that word, that more and more people, just the casual conversations I have with people spur conversation, and they go home and they read and they come back. Man, I never knew. Well, the books are there. All you got to do is grab them.
Right. Knowledge is power, and cognitive dissonance hurts your brain. So pick a team, start reading some good history, man. Well, not you, you're doing it. Everybody else listening, we all need to read more history and know the story of us as a people. And I really thank you, Michael. I think this has been awesome. I hope it doesn't get you in trouble. So give them warning that the most highly trafficked podcast known to man has you on. So I really appreciate it. And I'd like to meet you sometime. So let me know privately when you're doing a reenactment, and the boys and I'll come check it out.
Oh yeah. Hopefully next year is going to be a good year. I'm hoping to do a bunch. So we shall see. I'm itching for it. I'm ready to go camping again.
Yeah. All right, man. Take care, and God bless you.
Thank you, ma'am.